Warning, the following video contains spoilers for Forgotton Anne. Major spoilers will get its own part of the video, but the rest of the video will contain minor spoilers throughout, so don't say you weren't warned if you decide to stick around. I've always believed that video games are a wonderful medium for storytelling. There's a level of engagement and immersion that someone can feel when experiencing a game's story that they can't really get anywhere else. Today I'd like to talk about a game that, while it does tell a wonderful story, it does have some issues. Initially released back in 2018, we had the beautifully drawn Forgotton Anne. Created by Throughline Games, Forgotton Anne was made as one of the titles picked via community poll for Square's Square Enix Collective, a division dedicated to publishing promising indie games while letting their respective companies retain total creative control. The game would later go on to be nominated for many different awards regarding its storytelling and presentation, and was given relatively positive reviews by critics and fans alike. I'm a fan of a lot of what it has to offer myself, but as I mentioned before, the game's definitely not perfect for as gorgeous as it is. I'll get more into that later though, since that's getting into spoiler territory. So you have yourself a seat, because I got a story to tell that you won't soon forget. Our story takes place in a world known as the Forgotten Lands. Whenever something is forgotten, it's brought here, and if it's something inanimate, it's given a life of its own. The Forgotlings, as they're called, are under the leadership of a human they call Master Bonku. Just under Bonku, though, is our leading lady Anne, who serves as the enforcer behind Bonku's laws. She's called into work unexpectedly, though, after an explosion goes off at the nearby workshop. Anne, having been rudely woken up, gets right to work, and then we're given control. At the start of the game, you're given two simple tools: your ability to jump, and the most important thing you'll ever have in your arsenal, the Arca. In the beginning, the only powers it has are the ability to distill or reinstill the anima or energy of an object. In the case of Forgotlings, it can only distill it. You'll be using the Arca to put power into machinery to make it work again, or remove that same energy to repurpose it. And in the case of distilling Forgotlings, depending on your choices in the story, you won't have to use this one very often at all. Speaking of which, a scarf with glasses just broke into Anne's home. After you call him out for his bogus cover story, you're given your first of many story choices. Over the course of the game, you'll be given many different choices that will sort of affect the ending. For the first one, you can either distill him or let him live. Given that he broke in Anne's home, is currently threatening her with a lamp, and is a rebel apparently, I make the obvious choice. After making your choice, Master Bonku tasks Anne with dealing with the situation from earlier. Turns out the explosion was the work of rebels, and Anne, before setting off, decides to stop by the tower's checkpoint and pick up our next major tool, her wings. When the arc is charged, you can use them to give you a higher standing jump as well as a long jump. And given the gate is in a, less than ideal state, it will be needed to get over it. It's also at the station where you have this optional scene.
You know, for a training dummy, you're looking good. What? Oh, the enforcer made you. She did a great job.
I have nothing to add to this. I just thought this was super cute. Following that, you stop by the workshop and are asked by its chief Struct to grab his chrono calibration unit, as well as charge the workshop's generator so they can get back to work on building the ether bridge, the device Bonku's designed with the express purpose of making a gateway back to the human world. After doing some quick backtracking, you get the unit in question, which turns out to be your last tool for puzzle solving. Now when you have your Arca charged and activated, you can turn these valves in the anima pipes to redirect the power toward different parts of whatever room you're in. It's at this point, though, I should stress that Forgotton Anne's gameplay isn't going to be for everyone. The gameplay is like a puzzle platformer with more of an emphasis on the puzzle solving, since the actual platforming in the game is very basic, and it really will only give you some trouble since, from my experience, the controls can be a touch finicky at points. The puzzles, though, are one of two reasons I feel it will kill the experience for some people, though, because there are very few of them that require much thought. The other reason being the fact that it's impossible to die in the game. It was revealed in a blog post on Throughline Games' website that they wanted the game to have a strong feeling of what they call magical naturalism. They wanted to make a game that any player would be able to get into and be immersed in, which meant making a game that lacked challenge and the abstract level design you would normally see in a platformer. This was also why they didn't want Anne to be able to die in the game, because as stated in an interview done on pushsquare.com by the game's lead designer, Valdemar Schultz Anderson, we felt that it's a very strange thing to listen to a story that constantly starts and stops. There's a lack of rhythm that beats out cinematic, not to mention narrative tension. It's because of these choices that Forgotton Anne feels like a game that would rather tell you a compelling story than give you something mechanically challenging. For me, this never really killed the fun at all, but it very well could for you, so take that into consideration before you buy the game at all. Getting back to Anne, though, she finds herself in search of the leader of the rebellion, Fig, after a successful interrogation of a rebel Forgotling named Heeltoe. She's told that you can sometimes find him at a bar downtown called Scrappers inside the only working theater in town, Theater Royale. It's on your way to the theater that you'll have some encounters with the local Forgotlings. We have this sweet scene with Mrs. Hugh, who, after getting a memento from, basically this game's collectibles, reveals that despite being a camera, she somehow has children. Did she adopt them, or can these things somehow procreate? You know what? we should just move on from this. You'll also overhear passing conversations about whether or not Banku's way of doing things is right, or if it's even a good idea, and how a lot of Forgotlings see Anne as nothing more than a cruel soul stealer. There's even a scene where you've got to work out an argument that a mop and a shoe are having over a security mirror that's supposed to be set up at a local restaurant. Wait, they can eat too? But how you know what? Not important. Bigger fish to fry. Like how Anne is making her way to Theodore Royale. But in order to move forward, she has to attend an impromptu interview by a radio who runs a radio show called The Realm. It's a fun scene and all, but no matter what choice you make here, it doesn't really change much of anything that happens later. Honestly, that's a problem I have with the game as a whole. You're given a lot of choices, but aside from different character actions, very few of them actually change the overall story or how you tackle any given problem. I like how many choices were given, but I do wish they had more of an impact. Anne makes her way into Scrappers, and while in the air vents, she overhears Fig having a conversation with someone named Bulb about doing his part, whatever that means. After falling through the ceiling, though, Fig chats for a bit about how he was expecting her and books it with Anne giving chase. Ultimately, the chase proves fruitless as one of the platforms she jumps on breaks and she goes tumbling down into the city's lower streets. And it's here we're introduced to a mechanic that I find weirdly underutilized. See, in any lower streets section, you'll have to deal with what's called lost pieces. They're what I can only assume to be sentient pieces of broken Forgotlings that are attracted to sources of anima and will try and swarm them when they can, but are deathly afraid of light for some reason. I never understood why they were afraid of it in the first place, but regardless, they serve as a neat little obstacle for puzzle solving, as when Anne's Arca is charged and she's close by, they swarm you and prevent you from jumping normally, or with your wings. The problem I have with them, though, is they're only used in 2 parts of the game, both of which can be completed in 10 to 15 minutes. It's a shame, really, because I feel the game's puzzles needed more stuff like this, since a lot of them are so basic or repeated, like the sphere locks. Anyway, though, she gets out of what I think is an abandoned factory the lost pieces were living in, but a horde of them burst through and swarm Anne, only for Bulb to show up and shed a little light on the situation. After following Bulb down what I think is a sewer pipe, Anne is then effectively put on trial by the rebellion, with Fig serving as her defense. It's also here that both we and Anne learn from Fig, as well as Blanket, who happens to be the same Blanket Anne first came here with, that she is also a Forgotling, and the only reason she hasn't crystallized yet is because the Arca she wears prevents that. See, it's earlier in the game we learn from this suitcase Forgotling that all Forgotlings when they reach a certain point will begin to crystallize from the anima in their bodies, and this is their way of effectively dying of age. The choices you've made in the game will affect how a bit of this whole thing plays out, but this ends poorly no matter what, and Anne gets her Arca taken away from her, and after a flash of light, falls unconscious. She wakes up a few hours later in a room prepped for her in the rebels' hideout, greeted by Blanket, who fills her in on what happened and where she is. Through this entire section until she gets the Arca back, Anne will be incapable of both running and jumping, and every now and then will fall to her knees. It can take a while to get around because of this, but it never really bothered me too much, as it was pretty fitting given Anne is, currently dying. After meeting with Fig in the Rebels' Memorial, he surprises her by hatching a plan to help her get the Arca back from Bulb. Given she has no other good options at the moment, she decides to begrudgingly roll with it. He has Anne go meet with Quill, a Forgotling you met earlier in the game, who will give her a disguise so that she can distract Bulb while Fig steals the Arca. What follows is pure gold.
Oh, Great Boxton. Certainly, of course. I'm honored. That was quite a thing you did.
He doesn't talk much after the incident. I'm sure you understand.
After a successful heist, Anne goes back up to the surface to meet up with Fig and get her Arca back, but he almost arrives too late as Anne falls unconscious, her body getting ready to crystallize. Close call there, Fig. Real close. Fig then has Anne follow him to the plant to show her something. He doesn't say what's there, just that it's something she should know the truth about, and given he just saved her life, Anne does owe him this much. And now that we have Fig in the group, I can finally gush about how much I adore Fig. Seriously, Fig is an absolute gem. He makes practically every scene he's in, and especially as we'll see later, he's the best friend Anne could ask for. Never change, Fig. Never change. I have to say though, while I love the plant in terms of story, in terms of its level design, it's really just okay. The most you do until the end of it is platform off all these big metal crates to get around. It's by going through the plant, however, that Anne's naivety and how Banku handles things with the Forgotlings comes to light in full. Fig knows the full truth having worked at the plant in the past, but Anne is blissfully unaware of its true purpose. When she sees a Forgotling distill Quill, Anne is appalled at what she believes to be a major breach of protocol. It's in the plant's main room, though, we see exactly what Fig needed to show her. All those big metal crates you've been seeing throughout the plant? Yeah, turns out they've been packed with Forgotlings. Forgotlings that had their anima drained from them and their bodies burned. This is where Anne's entire world comes crashing down. Any Forgotling you or her have sent to the plant? This has been what happened to them. Banku's been genociding Forgotlings like antique shop Hitler to not only power the city, but to also power the Ether Bridge. Banku had told her this entire time it was something akin to a prison, since, let's be honest, I'm pretty sure Banku knew if he told Anne the truth, she'd be pretty angry about it. And angry she is, as what follows is a section where Anne, with Fig's help, destroys both the plant's main distiller and furnace in an attempt to save the rebel Forgotlings Banku just revealed he captured. None of this is really hard at all, with the puzzle needed to get to the distiller switch being so simple, and the furnace doesn't even have a puzzle. Just do a smidge of jumping and crawling and bam, you're done. It's a little underwhelming to be honest. Upon destroying the main room though, Fig gets the rebels out of the death crate, and he and Anne gotta book it cause the plant's ready to explode. You can take your time if you want to though, it's not timed at all. They make it to the top, and with no elevator or ladder to get down, Fig rides on Anne's back and using her wings, they jump to safety. Only for her wings to fall apart mid-flight. After they crash, thankfully unharmed, Fig tells Anne they need to hurry since Banku mentioned earlier about him launching an attack on the rebel hideout, but Anne ain't exactly feeling it. The man who was basically her father was just revealed to be both a liar and mass murderer, and with the knowledge that she contributed to this, now is the point where it all catches up to her. They have an argument, and after Anne calls Fig a soulless object, he says he'll give her some space, and leaves. After running off in the opposite direction, however, Anne discovers a secret cave mysteriously locked behind one of those sphere security doors. After stepping in, however, she's surprised to find herself in a forest, something only the human world should have. And then hears the voice of a woman named the Caretaker, who is the first Forgotling, and the first thought to be forgotten. What follows is a series of kinda cool puzzles involving manipulating Anne's reflection in the cave walls to solve some switch puzzles. Similarly to the Lost Pieces though, I feel more could have been done with this concept. In between rooms though, the Caretaker explains part of the nature of humanity and how Banku wound up in the Forgotten Lands in the first place. Turns out he was a world-renowned inventor known for his clocks, but over time as the world progressed, people moved on from his work until eventually he was forgotten by everybody. When Banku arrived, he became obsessed with the idea of returning home, and in an effort to do so, stole the Arca from an anima crystal known as the Cornerstone, which is the heart of this world. He split the heart in half and made an Arca glove for him, as well as Anne. The Caretaker doesn't just tell Anne how Banku was forgotten though, she also shows Anne how she was forgotten. We don't know the full context, but Anne's mother, after presumably a fight with someone who might be her husband, I say might because they never outright state their relationship, about the baby not being his, leaves Anne behind in what I can only describe as a little wooden boat. The only things she leaves for her are the blanket she swaddled in and a letter for Anne when she grows up, which we later find out explains vaguely why she left her behind. Yeah, I want you to put a pin in this entire thing, because we'll be coming back to this later. Oh boy, will we. Anyway though, before the Caretaker sends Anne off, she warns her of what will happen if Banku successfully uses the Ether Bridge. See, Banku needs the whole Arca so that he and Anne can return home, and if they cross over with the Arca, the Forgotten Lands will cease to exist, since it's also the heart of the world. So yeah, using the bridge is a very, very bad idea. What follows is a scene of Anne having herself a much-needed nap in a boat presumably made for her by the Caretaker. And it's at this point I need to talk about the one major thing this game has going for it, and that's how everything looks. I simply adore the way the game is presented. I've always loved games that use hand-drawn art, and Forgotten Anne has easily one of my favorite art styles. For a lot of people, I can imagine this was a big reason why they bought the game, because I can tell you it was for me. Every scene in the game is beautifully animated, and it adds so much charm to the game. I'd imagine the first thing people might think of when they see the game's art style is Studio Ghibli, which was an inspiration for them, but it wasn't the only one. Going back to the interview with pushsquare, the game's creative director, Alfred Guyon, had said that he was always interested in the diversity of stories from animation directors in Japan. He even went on to say that some of his bigger inspirations for the story of Forgotten Anne came from directors like Satoshi Kon, who's best known from films such as Perfect Blue and Paprika, as well as Paranoia Agent. Getting back to her sleeping heroine, though, her boat soon docks at a port underneath the rebels' base. All is not well, though, as she soon comes across the bodies of distilled Forgotlings, and the hideout's anima chandelier broken on the ground. Upon going to the memorial, you find Fig on an altar surrounded by rebels, with him having been distilled during Banku's attack. Anne is racked with sorrow over her friend's death, but all that's cut short when her Arca gathers a mass amount of anima from the nearby crystals, and you unlock the most underutilized mechanic in the game, the ability to revive distilled Forgotlings, as well as see where they came from by highlighting them when the Arca's on. Like, I'm not even kidding here. You get this cool new ability thanks to the Caretaker, and you're only required to use it twice, both of which involve Fig. You can use it to revive the distilled Forgotlings you saw before though, so that's nice. Enjoy your second life, friends. Anne then meets up with Fig and Bulb to discuss the plan of attack involving Banku. The Ether Bridge is practically complete at this point, so we gotta stop Banku fast before he Thanos snaps an entire dimension. So the plan is as follows. Bulb will grab as many rebels as he can to operate as backup in the event it's needed, while Anne and Fig sneak into the tower to try and convince Banku to stand down with the hope being Bulb's help won't be necessary. Anne turns in to get some rest before the big day, and she has one more kinda touching chat with Blanket before Anne wakes up to find she crystallized in the night. Oh, we also get a nice little flashback with Banku fixing up Tater Tot Anne's Arca.
I cannot believe I have to adjust this again. You are growing so fast.
I want to be this big.
Oh, you will.
I have nothing to add at all. I just thought this was adorable. If I'm gonna be honest, this last part of the game feels like it goes a little too fast. You have one more very annoying section with the lost pieces where if you know what you're doing, it will hopefully only take you 10 to 15 minutes, and an admittedly really fun part where you're trying to sneak Fig onto this train. Not gonna lie, I bust a gut laughing at some of the jokes here. I love how innocent the delivery from Anne is with this part.
I can just distill you again. Wait a moment.
No, wait, 2 times is twice too many. Just do what you have to do.
See you soon, Fig.
Please don't forget about me.
I love the voice acting for this game. It's after that you meet up with Fig at the tower to climb your way up to Banku. Oh, and while you're here, you can also reinstill Dilly while you're at it. Little buddy doesn't even hold against Anne the fact that she killed him. Alright, just gotta unlock this door here and... Oh, right, I instilled the scarf, so no anima. Oh, it's fine, I'll just go to the basement and... I'm gonna have to climb down this tower, aren't I? The things I do for friendship. So one final sphere lock puzzle later, and the door is open to ascend the rest of the tower. And this is where I need to give you a warning. This next part of the video will be discussing the game's 2 endings, as well as some of my issues with it. If you don't want that spoiled, head to the timestamp here. But honestly, if you've made it this far, you probably either played the game, or you don't really care too much about spoilers. So after some time-consuming platform puzzles and a quick stop at Banku's private quarters and library, you have what I guess you could consider a boss fight with the tower's secret guardian, Tink. It's not really hard at all, to be honest, and depending on your answers to her, you can end the fight without distilling her, but good luck with that one. At the top of the tower, Banku's currently nowhere to be found, but what we do find is the finished ether bridge hooked up to the cornerstone, ready for use. Banku then shows up, and after an exchange between him and Anne, ending with him trying to distill Fig, it's like the 3rd time today he's had the life sucked out of him. Talk about rough. He activates the ether bridge, with the only thing left he needs being Anne's Arca. Bulb shows up, though, and sacrifices himself to shove Banku onto the lower platform, as well as removing his Arca, and now Anne is given a choice. She can either restore the cornerstone by putting the Arcas back in, but sacrificing herself in the process, or she can take Banku and the Arca and head back to the human world, but it will erase the Forgotten Lands. If you choose the cornerstone ending, Anne has one final talk with Banku before they both crystallize. We then get a post-credits scene a few weeks later with a playable Fig where he writes a letter to Anne talking about how much he misses his friend, with hers and Banku's crystal being put in the center of town as a monument to her. He also reveals to some of the other Forgotlings that he plans on turning the old rebel hideout into a library with the books from the tower. While it sucks Anne died, it does end on a nice note with Fig standing strong and doing his best for the town. But I know what you're thinking. What about the ether bridge ending? Despite the cost, does that one have a good outcome for Anne? Well, do you remember how I said in the beginning that the story had issues? Yeah, this is where those issues start. So time traveling back to the ether bridge, using something you unlock when you get either ending, simply called the bridge, we instead choose to take Banku with us and return to the ether. Before leaving, Anne apologizes to Fig, saying how she hopes he can forgive her. Fig, being a total bro, says he already has, and Anne goes through the ether bridge with Banku. We then get a scene where we get the aftermath of when Anne's mother abandons her. She pushes the little boat upstream, and not a minute later, we see Banku presumably hiking near a river and picks up baby Anne, and then...
What's going on?
It's a time loop. The game doesn't even end at all, it just throws you right back to the beginning. Not only does this entire ending not make any sense, it just feels like a massive cop-out. It's been stated multiple times through the game that should the ether bridge be used, it will erase the Forgotten Lands. So why the heck does it somehow loop back time? And because this technically isn't even an ending, that means the choice at the end on whether or not you want Anne to go home or die is pointless, because at the end of the day, there's only one actual ending. The world can't move forward unless you pick this option. This is my big problem with the way choices in the game are handled. On a narrative level, they don't truly matter at all, since with the exception of the ending choice, your other choices only determine what tarot card you unlock at the end of the game. Genuine question, by the way, why did Anne need to put the Arcas back in the cornerstone? The caretaker says something about restoring the world to the way it was before, but with the exception of there being sunlight now, nothing seems that different. If there was a line of dialogue from the caretaker or someone else saying how the world is rotting without the Arca in its rightful place, then this would make sense, but to me as it is, the entire ending feels a little forced. By the way, remember that pinned scene with Anne's mom? Yeah, now's the time to get back to that, because boy do I have some issues with this one. First and foremost, why did she send her up a river? I mean, this scene clearly takes place in modern day, so orphanages and adoption services should exist. But no, let's not take the rational route when giving up my kid. No, let's send her upstream in a little wooden boat while it's pouring rain. Seriously, lady, you're lucky you didn't outright kill the kid. Ugh. Then there's the matter of Anne being forgotten, which, assuming I understand this right, based on how little water is in the boat when Bonku sees her, no more than a minute could have passed. Which means that in a minute or less, Anne's mom somehow forgot her child even existed. Again, I could be misunderstanding how being forgotten works here, and I'd love to be wrong, believe me, but this whole thing comes across as Anne's mom being really stupid. It really is a shame the endings in Anne's backstory bug me the way they do, because I do genuinely love this game. I love how it looks, and while it's not for everyone, I do enjoy the gameplay. I mean, heck, endings aside, I did thoroughly enjoy the story up to that point, as well as the characters. I just wish your choices mattered more in the game, and that one ending was better. Forgotton Anne is a really beautiful game, and as a guy who loves stories, I think I found myself a new genre to explore in the future because of this game. And despite my problems with it, I do think it's worth playing, even if only once. 95% of the journey, though, was plenty fun, and had just as much charm. I can easily tell a lot of love was put into this one, and like I said before, this is a story, for better or worse, I won't forget soon. You all have a nice day.